Hello, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus as we look ahead to what should be a wonderful Magic round up in Brisbane, all 8 games at Suncorp Stadium. It's cats and dogs in Brisbane, I'm told, at the moment. Let's hope the ground is up to the challenge. Phil Gould, welcome back.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
Never, ever better. The sun has never shone brighter. I'm going to start with an Ask Gus question. Hoof-hearted, why no podcast last week? And will this week's episode be called Six Again with Gus?
There's no six again here. We haven't changed the rules here. We had a little problem technology last week.
Yes, we had a technical
I'm going to
issue.
talk about adding technology and the complexity that causes systems a little bit later on. Something for you mathematical whizzes out there, a little bit of a lesson.
So, yes, we didn't. To be specific, our podcast machine blew up. And so we tried to record it in another way, but we didn't realise, because we couldn't hear, that all you could hear was me going, like Darth Vader into the microphone. So we thought rather than subject people to that, we'd get rid of it. But you know what? Just makes people keener to hear what we've got to say this week. Coming up, a very rich episode of Six Tackles. Going to hear from former Rooster and Manly player, and former referee Luke Phillips made some interesting comments over the weekend that I want to bring up with Gus. We'll do an excellent six-tackle trivia. Now, Gus, on the weekend, you pointed to what you thought was one of the most stupid rules in the game, that situation at Penrith where the player dived for the ball. There was no dummy half, and so the player dived for the ball.
Yep.
So it really, for all intents and purposes, it was a loose ball. But it was a penalty because you can't dive in the ruck. Yep. Dumb rule. So I'm going to get Gus's 3 worst rules in the game. Oh, and later, a little bit of Origin talk because we've got stories of Origin being released on Friday. But
was that the Panthers game or another game? I think I called the game.
It was Panthers game.
No,
wasn't it?
No. What game did I call?
No, I was calling it.
No.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was another one we called. What other one did you call? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was the Bronco South game.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the referee actually said to the player, or what he was going to say was, I know it's a stupid rule, but he said, I know it's a look, you just can't do it.
He did.
And I said, even the referee was going to say that, but I wonder if the referee could get fined for calling it a stupid rule. They want to fine me, but anyway.
That was Grant Atkins.
Yeah, Grant Atkins. Even he knew it was a stupid rule. And they, look, and we do these things, I'll talk about it later. I'll tell you why those sort of things come about.
I like Grant Atkins as a ref.
He's a good ref.
He tells it how it is, doesn't he?
He's a good ref. I think all the referees could improve if they just toned it down a little bit. If they just toned it down. If we gave them a little bit more discretion, a little bit more ownership of the action, rather than constantly putting them on KPIs and they all have to talk the same way. They all have to act the same way. They all try to... It's wrong, the system. The system is wrong.
Keep your powder dry.
All you're trying to do is get me in trouble, Matt.
No, I'm not.
Because the NRL hate it, and every time I criticise it, the NRL blow up about it. Not that I care.
I'll tell you what.
But I only do it in the best interest of the game. No, we won't do that. Get on with what you're going to do.
You don't want to change the batting order?
No, talk about the Sharks.
Right. Well, everyone has spoken about that amazing win on Sunday footy. Like, amazing. I don't want to analyse the win, but what I want to do is look at it through the prism of a coach. Now, to see the way the Sharks rallied when they were down to 12 was something. To see them bristle up even more and almost take it as a challenge when they were down to 11 was it was staggering. What does that say about what's happening there at that club? And this Craig Fitzgibbon, like, he must be a proper... Is he our next big thing as a coach? Like, I just thought that said so much about what's happening there at that club. Is that a fair comment?
Well, he's been doing a lot of good things at the Roosters for a long period of time. Craig Fitzgibbon was an international class player. He was an Origin player. He had a tremendous record as a footballer. He went overseas at the back end of his career and see a little bit of life and see a bit of the world. And they brought him back to the Roosters with knowing that his character and his personality is very much in the Roosters culture, and he's instilled that in a lot of the teams that he's been associated with there. He had a very big responsibility with the Roosters and handled it well, which is why he gets recognised by a club like the Sharks to come and be their head coach. And not only has he done that, but he's also gone out and recruited a couple of really good assistant coaches. One thing, the only thing I said to Craig when he got the job, and I congratulate him, I says, who's going to be your Craig Fitzgibbon? Trent Robinson's had the luxury of having Craig Fitzgibbon work for him for all these years, and the assistant coaches are so important to the head coaches. The assistant coaches do a lot of the hands-on stuff and a lot of the hack work around the players, and they've done the ones that have got the really close relationship with them. I said, Trent Robinson has had Craig Fitzgibbon. I said, who's going to be your Craig Fitzgibbon? And the things that you've been doing as an assistant coach, are you going to be able to delegate those to others and trust what they do? And he went out, I think Josh Hannay stayed with him. Mm-hmm. Josh had coached the first grade side as an interim side, and he brought Steve Price back from England. Steve Price was coming back from England, who's a former first grade coach, and he's had great success in the UK. So he's really gone out and got some depth of talent in that regard as well to assist him. So, but there is no doubt that the Sharks as a football club now look very different to what they looked like 12 months ago, and that the character and the personality of this team is very in keeping with what we knew of Craig as a player. He's been able to instill that in his fitness and his enthusiasm and his grit and his determination. And when you get in games like that, where you've got your backs to the wall and you sense that you can still win even though things have gone against you, it's very hard to give. The harder you train and the harder you work, the harder it is to give up. And they just couldn't give up. And once it got to the point where they felt as though they were in it and they were still able to manage the flow of the game, which they did, I said it with 20 minutes to go. Even though they're down 12 and 11, I said that with 20 minutes to go, I said, I'm not looking at them losing today.
It didn't look like losing.
I felt that way 10 minutes before half time. I just didn't say it at that time. But never did I really feel as though they were going to lose it. And they'd worked too hard. So when it got down to 12 men and then 11, it was that was just an easy transition for them. That wasn't we're gone now. That was kind of like beauty. Throw something else at it.
Yeah.
And they did. And the speed with which they ran. And there is a lot of the elements when the Roosters were going at their absolute best, and they're going through a little transition at the moment, but when the Roosters were at their bristling best, a lot of those traits are in this Sharks team now, and in the way that they advance the ball and they hit the ball up, and the way that they defend and the way they work for each other in defence. And even down to 11 men, they looked like they had more players than the Warriors in both attack and defence. They were outnumbering them everywhere, and the Warriors were pretty clueless in trying to how to deal with that. So
they pulled away from him in the end.
Craig Fitzgibbon, I'm sure, will be a career coach and coach, for as long as he ever wants to, for the rest of his life or the rest of his working life. And he's made a brilliant start. And there is no doubt that the Sharks have gone from, an average team, a team in the middle of the road team, to a serious contender. A serious contender. Storm and Panthers are well established and they've got a lead on everyone, but they're probably the next best. Well, they are the next best at the moment.
Yeah. Thought it was stirring stuff on Sunday footy.
Well, it's brilliant. And Craig was like that as a player. You asked Brad Fittler. Brad Fittler defended alongside Craig in the line for a number of years, and what Craig Fitzgibbon meant to him and his leadership as well, and the support that Craig gave him. And, it was just... And you've got to remember, it's in his blood. His father was a very good NRL coach, first grade coach. Wasn't NRL back then, but Alan Fitzgibbon was a very good coach as well. So it's kind of in his blood. And Alan coached the Cronulla side.
Yeah.
He coached the Cronulla Sharks when they were minor premiers in 1988 and did an outstanding job. So there is coaching in his blood. There's coaching in his personality. He's always been a team-minded person, which is very, very good for a coach. It's great for a coach to have those qualities as a player, to be team-minded and team first, and to sacrifice and team. To do things that are supportive of teammates and all that on and off the field. And I think that's the environment he's created there. And he's obviously, recruited well too, because Nico Hines and Dale Finucane have come out of one of the premier systems in the world, with the Melbourne Storm. So amazing. They've been able to come in, and they're just an extension of the coach on the field, which is, you've got to have a living and breathing example of it out there. And some of those young blokes at the Sharks that now have direction, we're seeing what good young players they are.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up with you because watching in the end there when Ramian got sin bin, they ran over to each other and they slapped each other on the back, and it was like, righto, let's aim up again. And I can't remember seeing a team do that for a very, very long time. And to me, that was an indication of where they're at. I thought they were brilliant. Now, should Will Kennedy have been sent off?
No, I don't think so. To me, That's not a send-off action. It was reflex. The kid bounced up. He wasn't hurt. Put yourself in Will Kennedy's shoes. What I see as a send-off offence is a deliberate, forceful, aggressive, vengeful type action that just was totally unnecessary. I don't think we should be sending players from the field the way we do, all right? I know fans get all uppity about this and they do it on social media, and that's why the NRL reacts. But Will Kennedy is a fullback, defending in the front line, all right? It's not where he usually defends, but they get fullbacks to defend in the last line. He knows there's no one behind him. He knows he's the last line of defence as a fullback, but he's up in the line. If they beat him, they beat everyone. And young Reece Walsh has a wicked left foot step, which took him totally by surprise, beat him to the inside, and he sort of flung his arm out, and it was a grabbing motion. It was a grabbing motion rather than one of these whoosh, so the people on video can see what I'm saying, one of these whooshka ones where they're going to swing the forearm and take your head off and all that sort of thing. And it wasn't a stiff arm tackle in the old language, a stiff arm where you hold the arm out stiff and just have the bloke wrap around your thing. So it was a reflex, reaching, grabbing type motion that kind of got him across the shoulder, and it looked spectacular.
Well, it did.
But Reece Walsh, to his credit, bounces up. So it's not, if they'd given him 10 minutes and penalised, he might have been sweet with that. It's unlucky. It's an accident. He didn't mean it. As soon as it happened, he puts, I'm sorry, that just went wrong. But I know if he beats me, he scores a try. There's no fullback. I'm the fullback. I know if he beats me, and he beat me, right, I've got to make a lunge at him. No one else was going to get him. Otherwise, he scores under the post. So I know what's going through Kennedy's mind.
But that's not the referee's consideration, is it?
No, this is not. Well, it's why can't it be? Because this is not some bloke running at me and saying, I'm going to knock this bloke's head off, and I'm going to swing my arm at him and belt him, and you can actually tell it's an aggressive swinging arm action. This is a bloke who's just totally out, all ends up beaten, knows he's, and just thrown his hand out. No one was hurt. The player bounced up really quickly. There was no animosity in it. There was no aggression or vengeful action in it. It looks sensational and goes, and everyone imagines their child being in that position that just got cartwheeled. But the kid got up. He was as good as a goal. I don't see that as a send-off action. You
don't see too many blokes suffer serious injuries because of the thing that Kennedy did.
No,
if it was a stiff arm, as you say,
they look spectacular.
They
look spectacular. And they've actually got it's actually pulling on their shoulder and the legs go up and and it's, and Reece wasn't going to overplay it. If he'd have stayed down and done all that, but he bounced up really, knew what had happened. He's a fullback himself. He knows what was going through his mind. It was the same with Lawton the other day. I say it's a spear tackle. It's not a spear tackle. It wasn't what's Cameron Murray famous for? Getting forward, getting down to his front, playing the ball quickly, getting an offload. All these things are going through Lawton in a one-on-one tackle. So he says, I've got to get him off the ground. I've got to turn him around so that he can't pass the ball. He can't get onto his stomach. He can't pass. And that's all he's trying to do. But with the momentum of the tackle and the flipping action, all right, he ended up in an awkward position. But he didn't mean it. It was an accident. Why do we have to send people off? Why does someone have to be made accountable for that and sent off? I don't get that.
So I'm a bit scared to go here, but I will. The majority of people are against you with the Lawton one.
I don't care.
I know you don't care.
I don't care.
Andrew Johns Andrew Johns in particular has said that he lost control of that tackle and the Lawton one, and
but that doesn't make it aggressive.
No, but he's saying that because he lost control of the tackle is what made it made it dangerous, and therefore he is responsible for what happened.
I'm not saying that it wasn't dangerous and could have gone bad. I'm not saying that, but that wasn't the intention of the tackle. That wasn't the deliberate action. That wasn't an aggressive, get this India type action. All right, I don't care who disagrees with me. I'm telling you what I think. This is 6 tackles with Gus, not 6 tackles. Go and do 6 tackles with Andrew Johns if you want to.
No, I'm not.
All right, I'm telling you what I think.
I suppose.
And I don't care who agrees with it. I don't care who disagrees with it. I don't care what the NRL think. They can jump up and down all they like.
I'm not talking about the NRL. I'm not talking about.
But I'm just telling you, I don't care. I see what I see. It's not a deliberate, aggressive, get this India type action.
I don't think anyone says he was doing that.
All right, well then why was he sent off? Because someone has to pay for it, because, we have to show Mummy we're looking after little Johnny. Well, we don't see that very often, do we? The game's better than it's ever been. It's cleaner than it's ever been in that regard. We've sanitised it as far as we can get it. But every now and then you're going to have a miss. You're going to have you're going to have an awkward action, or you're going to have an accident, or you're going to have a mistiming, or you're going to have something like that. And that's all they are. They're mistimings of the thing. This is not a perfect scenario. They do it to each other in the gym. I keep saying to you, come out and watch players train their tackling technique in the gym. It happens in the gym on each other, on teammates, because things just happen in the spur of the moment, and with bodies going in, it's all multi-directional and it's all different. No two tackles are the same. You can't just homogenise it, sanitise it, and make it all the same cookie cutter type thing for every. You're going to get me into the rules now. Why are you upsetting me? It's Wednesday.
Well,
this is.
Are we all right? I'm a bit worried.
This is no upset. No upset Wednesday. I was nice and serene today.
Well, tomorrow you can have a little pina colada in the afternoon up in Brisbane, where it's pouring rain, Gus. Pouring.
I'm busy in Brisbane. I'm going today, actually. I'm going to Toowoomba tonight for a meeting at Toowoomba, and then I'm in Brisbane until Monday morning. And I've got a lot of meetings with a lot of people.
You got no socialisation at all?
Zero.
Gee,
I don't socialise. Where do I socialise?
Oh.
You ever seen me socialise?
Yep. I've socialised with you a few times. Good fun. Do you like pina colada? I love pina colada.
No.
If you were to have a cocktail, which one would you order?
I wouldn't.
Yes, you would.
No, I would never have a cocktail. I don't think I've ever had a cocktail in my life.
I don't believe that. I reckon you'd have had a Blue Lagoon or something back in the day.
When I was younger and coaching, we used to have a few Zambuca shots.
Yeah, I've heard about the Black Zambuca.
That was about the...
Was that when you'd go and you'd take the Origin boys? 30 Zambucas?
What happens in Origin stays in Origin.
But didn't you just walk up to the bar and say 30 Zambucas?
What happens in Origin stays in Origin, please. It's all about team spirit.
Do you know if you ordered 30 Zambucas now, it'd cost you about $600?
Well, it was a lot more than 30. So.
That was the first round. Hey, Gus, the Broncos have won 3 in a row. Now, you've been an advocate saying that they are coming good. Now, if anyone watched that game last week, you'd have seen that they dead set are coming good. Is this the next great Broncos team?
Oh, I think it's the embryo of it. The embryo of it. It's hard to create the greatness that you're talking about, or the dominance that they enjoyed back, in the 90s, in their halcyon days. It's hard to create those types of dominances today. We're seeing a couple of teams in the Melbourne Storm and the Panthers, which will be slowly picked apart by the market over time. They're doing their best to hold on to them all, but that's impossible. That's why they've got to have their own development processes to replace those with like for like down the track. But this Broncos team, even during the last couple of years, even when Anthony Seabold was coaching them and struggling, it was obvious that he wasn't going to last there. And then Kevin came in last year and things weren't going too well. But I looked at the individual athletes themselves and their size and their athletic ability and the way they're playing. And a lot of them got to NRL level too early. And this happens. It happens. You've got to go through a period of where they've got to get their education, and they've got to get the education that you can't give them off the field. They've got to get it on the field. They've got to go out there and be educated on the field. So you deal with the ups and downs with that, and it's a process you go through with young players if you believe they're the ones of the future. And I've been through this a number of times, and it's a different sort of football you play. It's a different sort of coaching you give. And as they develop as footballers and they develop as people and they develop their confidence and their skills, then things change over a period of time. And you can see the difference, even in the same players over the last couple of years that have been on the end of some shellackings, right? They're probably the better athlete, the better committed player, the better team man has come to the fore at the Broncos. So out of all those ones, they're coming to the fore. And all they need sometimes, these young kids, is some exposure to some on-field leadership that brings it all to light. And that's where Adam Reynolds has been a major purchase for them, and where I said he will end up being the buy of the year. And Nico Hines and all that, of course, they're great buys. But for the Broncos, they couldn't have made a better buy in the last 20 years than Adam Reynolds is to them right now, because he's the one that's going to bring that to light. And if you want an example, it's why we bought Maloney and James Talman out to the Panthers at a very crucial time in those young players' careers. They're not around when they're winning competitions like they're doing now, but they're very responsible for a lot of the education and on-field education and mentorship and leadership they got during that time. And Adam Reynolds is going to be vital. I don't know how long he'll last or how long he'll play, but whatever time they spend with Adam Reynolds, these young fellas are going to remember it for the rest of their lives, and it's bringing them to light. So those young forwards that have sort of been on the Anderson shellackings over the last couple of years, and the young backs, you're thinking, oh, well, can they tackle or will they? They will. They're Broncos. They will. They've come through as Broncos, and they're going to gain in confidence. And in this competition, which has certainly got 2 or 3 levels to it, they're going to win enough games to keep building their confidence until the day comes where, you know what, they stick it into a Melbourne Storm, then you know they've arrived. You know.
You know how you just compared Maloney with Reynolds. Like in Brisbane terms, I know they're obviously vastly different players, but in terms of influence, would you say the Adam Reynolds purchase is on par with Glenn Lazarus going to Brisbane?
Yeah, Broncos were always going to be a great side. Glenn Lazarus was a really important purchase for them. He was a pretty special player, and Glenn Lazarus, he went to Melbourne Storm, won a comp with them too. He won a competition with the Raiders.
And Brisbane.
Yeah, and he was, I've got to say, he was my lucky charm in Origin. I always liked it when he was in my Origin team too. We didn't lose when he was playing. And he liked me telling him that all the time too. Big Glenn. But he, look, there is no doubt that you need a living, breathing example of professionalism, winning attitude, courage and toughness. And that's, you're just talking about Craig Fitzgibbon. Now, he can do that as a coach, and he can speak that way, and he can train them that way, and he can talk that way. But to be able to send Dale Finucane out with them, that's a bonus, because once they leave the dressing room, you've got no control over what's being said or how it's being said out there on the field. But if you've got a living, breathing example out there that extends onto that and keeps them calm and keeps them doing what they're doing, and I experienced it myself, and I've seen players that have been vital to that. We were talking about the Titans the other day, buying a Kieran Foran. Now, Kieran Foran might be that player that helps them out, but over the years you've seen the Jeremy Smiths and the Kevin Campions and those types of players that are tough, gritty, professional men that go to clubs and they make a difference on the field. They keep the young blokes together and make sure they control their thoughts, make sure they control their actions and keep themselves in the moment, and all these sort of things that are important to a player's development as a person and as a player. It's great if you've got a living and breathing example that's out there on the field with them. And Reynolds is doing that. Reynolds is just pointing them in the right direction, making sure their fifth tackle options are good, making sure players are set up and organised, and then he's allowing their athletic ability to take over. And you can see them improving around him. They've improved as the competition's gone on.
Absolutely.
And then a couple of wins is giving them confidence. Confidence is massive. It's massive. Confidence is massive. Self-belief is massive. This is a battle of the mind. At this level, it's a battle of the mind. It's 95% of it is mental. You can dish up the other 5% any way you like. At this level, 95% of it is what you believe.
And you
being able to control your attitude and control your thinking and control the way you explain things happen to you, and to keep yourself in the moment, to play the football and be a valuable team member and concentrate on the things that are important on every play, every minute for the full 80 minutes. I feel like I'm giving a coaching lesson.
I just text Freddie to see whether you have had a cocktail. He's written back saying he's once seen you drink a fluffy duck.
Never.
Well,
never. I wouldn't even know what a fluffy duck was.
Sometimes it doesn't matter what
Bradford
a fluffy
was a liar, officially.
Yeah. I feel like I'm being too serious here. I'm going to move the referee one down the bottom. What else have we got here? By way of...
was that too deep for you there, was it?
Oh! Now, this is a good one.
Is all this too deep for you?
No, I love it.
Do you want to cut all that out?
No, I like it. It's great. It's great. Connor Cleary. Now,
I'm happy to cut it all out if you like.
Gus, it's great. It's great. It's just, as you pointed out earlier, this is 6 tackles with Gus.
You embrace you're the same. You just try to get me in trouble.
No,
that's all you want?
I just like talking. I like talking with you.
You just like to get me in trouble. Not that I care.
Okay, here's something not so serious. Sharks Rob says, if all the mascots got into a fight, which one would win?
If all the mascots got into a fight.
Yeah. So we better get the ladder, eh? So we can see who the mascots are.
Wait on. Well, we should be able to work out who the mascots are, Matthew. So let me go to the ladder. So we've got Storm. I don't even know what that is.
Well, it's not really
Panther. Cowboy, we got guns. Shark, you got teeth. Eel, not in the fight. Rooster,
No.
no.
Seagull.
Seagull, no.
None.
Bronco, Rabbitoh, no. Warrior, Dragon, Raider,
Oh,
Tiger,
Hard to beat.
Titan. What's a Titan? Bulldog, Knight.
All right. Well, do you want to do a process of elimination?
Fight. In a fight,
Yeah.
I'm backing Bulldog.
Oh, of course you are. Let's say the Bulldog had a bye that week.
Yep.
Do you want to do process of elimination? We'll storm out.
I don't even know what a storm is. Thunderclap, is it? I don't know. They got that bloke who runs around in that purple suit.
Panthers in.
Panther, well, Panther can be
Cowboy
very
in
aggressive.
or Cowboy out?
Cowboy out. Indians.
Shark. We'll see. Where is the fight? If it's on land, the shark can't win.
It's underwater.
Shark out.
Shark out.
Eel out. Rooster
Eel
out.
out. Rooster out. Seagull out.
Bronco.
Bronco. Yeah, those
No.
horses can be no.
Rabbitoh.
No.
Warrior in.
Warrior in. Dragon in. Fire-breathing dragon.
Mm.
Raider. He'd have to bring his Viking mates with him.
Tiger.
Tiger.
Always in.
Titan. Bulldog. Knight. Yeah.
So we're down to Panther, Warrior, Dragon, and Tiger.
Yeah, they're the ones.
Right, so Panther versus Warrior. There's the semi-finals.
Yeah. Panther. Bite him on the neck. Kill him.
Dragon versus Tiger. Wow.
Yeah, dragon, breathing fire, burn him up.
Oh, so it's Panthers versus Dragons grand final.
Yeah, dragon.
Dragon!
Dragon wins.
Great question.
The only one that could slay the dragon is St. George, and he's on his team.
That's a real. I didn't think we'd get such a great result to that question. Dragon wins the mascot fight.
Yep.
However, if it's in the water, obviously a shark.
Which is a fictional character. They don't exist.
Not on this planet, anyway.
I'm getting text messages.
Matt Hall, ask Gus, if there were a magic round in the 80s, would any footy actually be played, or would the coaches be scrambling to find their players in the pubs?
It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad.
Where would you have played magic round in the 80s?
Eh?
Where would magic round have been played?
Well, we had a few magic round type things. We had the League Olympics. We actually had a magic round back in the 80s, or back in the 70s, at the Sydney Cricket Ground. All the games were played at the Sydney Cricket Ground one weekend.
Yeah.
I was only a young bloke. I came on in the second half to play against the Cronulla Sharks. I marked Steve Rogers.
Oh, would have been a good job.
It was a good day for him. Pretty easy day for him.
You played the centres?
Yeah, but no, I played 5'8". He was playing 5'8" for the Sharks. I come on in the second half, 1977, I think, 1977. But I'm pretty sure that year we played a lot of games. There was a lot of games back to back. I think we played at the cricket ground that weekend. We had a League Olympics. Do you ever remember before you were born?
Yeah, but I remember people talking about it.
It was at Leichhardt Oval, and they had sprint races and shot putts and tug of wars and all sorts of things on the night. And
so what was that? Was that like a television event, or?
It was, yeah. Like it was the Amco Cup used to be played at Leichhardt Oval Wednesday nights, and that was your big thing. You go home and watch the Amco Cup on Wednesday nights, and that was the only football played at night. That was the only chance back in those days. The only games we played under lights was at Leichhardt Oval, because they'd renovated Leichhardt Oval and they'd built these beautiful lights that were, and Ray Warren was the caller, and that's so.
Tug of war.
And it was great as a kid, because they were the ones where you got your chance to go and play first grade. In your early days, when you're early in your career, they'd pick you to play in the Amco Cup game. Wednesday night footy on TV. You'd be on TV. All your mates would see you on TV.
Did you play Amco Cup before you played first grade premiership footy?
No.
I
played my first. We didn't call it a debut back in the day. Today, if you come off the bench, they call it your debut. We only sort of thought it was a debut if you got picked in the team. Oh. But probably 12 or 13 times, I don't know, before I actually got picked to play play first grade, I came off the bench. In those days, you had to play a full game in the lower grades.
Yeah.
So you'd have to either play a full game in under 23s, a full game in reserve grade, and then you could sit on the bench for first grade. There was no fresh reserves in those days. You had to pick blokes that played in the game before, and that was way up into the 90s before they had fresh reserves. So you'd sit there. So my first run on in first grade was 1976. I was 18, and I played a full game in the under 23s, and I used to sit on the bench for reserve grade. Bobby Moses, the great South Sydney player Bobby Moses, was our coach, the reserve grade coach at Panthers at the time. And he used to sit me on the bench for reserve grade every week. This is a true story. and I sat on the bench for reserve grade, and I played, I think, the last 10 minutes, and I figured, well, that was my afternoon done. And we used to have a spa bath in the corner of the old dressing room at Panthers, spa bath. We were the only team in the competition, only fit 4 or 5 blokes in it. So first grade ran out to play. We finished our reserve grade game. You know, I was one of the reserves who didn't get a run. So I've had my shower and everything. I've jumped in the spa bath and I've grabbed a can of Tooheys New, and I'm sitting in there and I've had half a can of Tooheys New. And I'm sitting in the spa bath there, and a bloke come running and he said, Phil, yeah. He said, Coach wants you on the bench for first grade. And I kind of looked at him with a bit of a shock. I said, what? He said, Coach wants you on the bench for first grade. I said, get out. He said, no, he does. Get dressed. You've got to get on the bench for first grade. Because we didn't have a goal kicker in first grade. And the bloke who was kicking, Glenn West, had already missed 2 goals. He said, he wants you on the bench. He said, you might have to get a run in the second half. And then he looked at the can of beer. He said, is that yours? I said, no, it's not mine. I'd already had half a can of beer. So I went and got dressed, and I put a tracksuit top on and went out and sat on the bench. You know, and I'm panicking. I might be running on in first grade. So we've come in at half time into the old dressing room at Penrith, and Barry Harris was the coach. Former copper Barry Harris, played with the club. Big Barry Harris comes in. He turns around, he says, young Gould, he said, you're playing fullback. I said, sweet. So I jumped up and they gave me a jersey, and I put a jersey on. Don't know what number it was. And he said, you're doing the goal kicking. I said, sweet. So Bob O'Reilly was our captain. And so I reached into my pocket for my mouth guard, and when I put the mouth guard in my mouth, it didn't fit. I had someone else's jacket on.
Oh, no.
So I haven't got my mouth guard. So then there's a pair of scissors on the table there. So I grabbed the scissors, and I'm trying to cut this mouth guard to the shape that I can somehow fit it in my mouth. And I thought, well, I'll just hold it in my mouth somehow, you know. So I'm cutting and I cut the top off that finger. Next thing is bleeding everywhere. So I've got my finger wrapped up in my jersey like that.
This is the worst debut in history.
Because it's bleeding everywhere. I've got a mouth guard that doesn't fit in the mouth.
And you've had half a drink.
I've had half a can of Tooheys. And they've said, out you go and play.
Oh.
And that was my debut in first grade. I played the whole second half.
Do you remember what happened?
I kicked a goal. Went all right.
Missed 6.
I played.
Saw 3 sets of posts.
I played, and you talk about a learning experience. I played fullback and went pretty good, and kicked a goal, and I played behind a 5'8" called Dave Topless, English international 5'8", who came out some years later and played for the Balmain Tigers and did a great job with them. Penrith, we weren't a very good team back in the day, but just that 40 minutes playing with him against men, against an aggressive, men, and you're only 18 years of age. That's a big step up.
Who are you playing against?
Played Balmain. Dennis Tutty.
Oh, he was tough man.
She was pretty tough. Yeah, and but playing in that game, just things that he said to me and how he positioned me, and in those days, you'd come to training. The big thrill for me as a kid coming to training was, and because we had all 3 grades, we had a first grade, we had a reserve grade, and we had under 23s. But if you got to training early, there was always a giant game of touch football on. With all 3 grades. They'd all be out on the field warming up, playing touch football. You know, it wasn't as scientific as it is today. So I used to race. We'd race, me and my mate Taz Bateri, we'd race from university. We're going to University of New South Wales to get out there as early as we could because we wanted to be in the touch football game. And you'd be playing touch football with English international Mike Stevenson, Bill Ashurst, Dave Topless, all these, Terry Wiki, all these great playmaking, and honestly, I learned a lot of my football playing in those touch football games with those great English players. Mick Stevenson, Bill Ashurst was a freak of a player. And Dave Topless was a wonderful ball player, like really crafty. And the way they spoke and the way they positioned you and the types of plays that they ran. And
when you say English players,
they were English international.
Yeah, but when you say you learned from those English players, did you learn because of the English style?
Well, that's the style they brought to us.
Yeah.
That's the style.
So how was it different?
Bill Ashurst, because for them it was all about skill and attack and angles and timing and tempo. You know, and these are words that are probably lost on a lot of modern day players. But and it was all about positioning and communication. So we didn't have a playbook. We didn't have a repertoire of plays that were drilled into us like they are today. We didn't have structures and we didn't have shapes. It was all on the run. Everything that we see today comes out of that period where it was more formalised and practiced and repeat skills. But this was talking and thinking on the run, right? Totally different type of football in a totally different era. But it was that communication and that instantaneous communication. Today they call it playing what you see or eyes up football. That's all football was back then. And to play with these fellows who crafted their game purely on their ability to make people around them look good and ball play, and that was the highlight of my early career, was getting to training to play in those touch football games, which had a big influence on the type of player I became eventually. But I used to love that. I used to love going to training to play with those blokes. And sometimes the coach would come out, and if everyone was having a go, he'd just leave it that way all night.
Really?
Yeah, we'd play for 2.5 hours, then we'd go to the pub. Quite often, and the three coaches would come out, they'd have their selection meeting, they'd come out on the field, and Big Barry used to stand there with his hand down the front of his tracksuit pants. And at Penrith, there used to be fogs. I can remember we used to have thick fogs out there back in the day, and it'd be bitterly cold in the middle of winter. Everyone would be running around in tracksuits, but the touch football game might go for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And you just play. And then we'd all go to the pub and have a beer together, and then Thursday night you'd break up into your teams. And
see, that would have been
go from
what
there.
A great era.
And that's what made a club too. But those sort of, and I tried to carry that through in all my coaching. Wherever I went, we always had club sessions. We always had club training. So I had all three grades working together and training together and playing together, and later on even Penrith through the academy program that we'd regularly have kids come up and train with the NRL players, and so. A Cleary and a Luai could have run a first grade session at 17 years of age. That's
great.
That's how talented they were. So, and I've always had the luxury of that. So but they're wonderful days, wonderful days, and the thrill of getting there and playing with these blokes. And so I ran out onto the field in this game, and and Dave Topless, because I'd played touch football with him at training.
Yeah.
And he said, "Come late, come here, come there."
So,
come late.
1976, you get a run on
come
him
late,
first.
come late, come close.
So all the games you played before you run on debut, they're not counted.
I think they do. I think they count them. I don't know. I don't care. So I did that. So that was the only time in '76 I played first grade that year. I was playing fullback in under 23s.
Right.
And then the next year I moved up to reserve grade.
Yep.
And probably on 8 or 10 occasions during the year, I'd play the full reserve grade game and then go on in the back end of the first grade game. And that year, I went and played in a couple of Anco Cup games. I actually played against the Great Eastern Suburbs side at Leichhardt Oval, and the side, the remnants of that 74-75 Roosters era. Arthur Beetson played. They all played. The great players played. Schubert, Fairfax, all those sort of players in '77, and
wow.
They sort of gave us a lesson at Leichhardt Oval that night. But it was great to be on the field with those players. I played on the wing. I played on the wing in that game. I mean, wasn't much of a winger, as it turned out, but wasn't much of anything. But it was a thrill to be in those players. And the next year, I was first grade captain. That's how rapid it sort of took off.
I've cut a couple of the serious issues I had here out of the show because I like that. Hey, Connor Cleary is obviously a Bulldogs fan. He tweets AskGus, which you can do on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. He says, I believe Terry Lamb should be in the conversation regarding rugby league immortality. Now he's in Bulldogs immortality. Don't worry about that. Terry Lamb, the great Terry Lamb, Gus.
Yep. Best player I ever played with. Best footballer I ever played with. Incredible. And he still works for us today. He's still in the office there every day, and nothing's changed with him. Beautiful man. Great player. I actually coached him too. I didn't coach him, he coached me, but in '88 we won a comp there as well. But he was the best player that I played with. They had some great players back in those days. Steve Mortimer, obviously, and those sort of players. But Terry Lamb was a club changer when he came to the club. We won comps in '84, '85, '88, and he was a part of all those. And he was still going in '95, I think, when they won the comp. Many years.
He was, yes, he was, yeah. So the era for halves between the 80s, 80 and 90, let's say, was that strong, wasn't it? Like, Terry Lamb played 8 games for New South Wales and 7 tests for Australia. In any other era,
there were halves everywhere, mate.
Weren't there? It was unbelievable.
Halves and 5/8. But how were we educated? How did we educate players in those days? Games of touch football at training, and and now it was a different lifestyle back then. Like we we grew up riding bikes everywhere we went, and down the park every afternoon playing touch or tackle football or with mates, and it was just your life. It's just what you did. Everyone was in the park every afternoon, and that's where all those great playmakers came from. Our kids don't do that these days.
No, they don't. Tell me about it. Yeah.
And we take the creativity out of them. We take the creativity out of all kids. You know, it's not valued. Unfortunately, it's not valued in education, and it's not valued in rugby league sometimes. The creativity is coached out of them in this cookie cutter approach to rugby league development, which I hate.
Yes.
Don't start me on that.
Well, you think about the halves. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, like Sterling and Mortimer shared the 7 for New South Wales, and then before that it was Rodonicus, and then Stewart, and then Langer, and then Hasler played a bit, and then Brandy,
there's a lot more than them,
and then Lyons, and Lamb, and Daly, and it was remarkable.
But every team back in the day had great halves, had great halfbacks. Some of our teams struggle because we haven't got enough halfbacks. Everyone's searching for a halfback.
I know.
Everyone's searching for a halfback.
Wouldn't you want to, like, that when you were younger?
Andrew Johns drew it for everyone. So.
But wouldn't you want to, like, that's the position everyone would want to play.
Unless they're playing like Andrew Johns at 15, they move him to hooker or they move him somewhere else, and everyone's looking for something that's not there. You're comparing them with the greatest.
But could you imagine the NFL struggling to find a quarterback? Like,
no, because mate, I wrote this 20 years ago. I wrote this 25 years ago. All right, the biggest asset to NFL football is the quarterback. He's your highest paid player. He's your one that gets you home. And they have 5 or 6 on their roster. They don't have one in case he gets hurt. They've got 5 or 6. Yet we haven't got enough for 16 NRL teams. And I wrote it 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Put my money where my mouth is, and we had one at Penrith. They had a Playmaker Academy. The game should have had its own Playmaker Academy years and years and years ago to protect the quality of our competition, to protect the quality of our of our NRL teams. We should have been producing kids, and they should have been developing that part of the game for a long, long period of time, because no side can win without them. You can't win without them. The game should have been investing in that a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
Don't start me, Matthew.
I won't. 6 tackle trivia time. Got 3 questions for you this week, all around the theme of the week, the send-off.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to do this with 3 questions?
Now, the funniest send-off I ever saw?
Yeah, Peter Kelly.
Yeah. You know what was funny about it? It was Anzac Day, cricket ground.
Yeah.
South Sydney are playing the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Bulldogs kicked off. South Sydney winger Ross Harrington ran it up. Peter Kelly hit him with a coat hanger. Got sent straight off. The bugler, the 88-year-old bugler who'd walked out to the middle of the cricket ground to play the last post.
Peter Kelly beat him off.
He was still shuffling off the field, and Kel beat him back to the member stand. Barry Nelson was the chairman of the Bulldogs. He was walking with the bugler, and they're walking along slowly. He thought Kel had forgot his mouth guard and run back to the dressing room. First tackle of the game, he got sent off.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. I've got 3 questions for Gus. Let's take our little break, and on the other side of that, I'm going to ask him, Tony Barber style, 3 questions. I wish we had a buzzer this week. Back with 6 tackle trivia after this. Phil Gould, 6 tackle trivia. Question 1. Who was the first player sent off in State of Origin?
That was the Queensland boy who I think was playing with Penrith at the time. What's his name? I saw him up there in Queensland a couple of years ago. Oh, forward, the big.
Mm-hmm. Started at Cronulla.
Yeah, he did. I know who it is. I just can't grab the name. I'm blaming COVID fog.
I can tell you his nickname.
I could probably tell you that. He's great mates. He's great mates with a lot of the older Penrith blokes out there. Oh, what's his name?
His nickname's Knuckles.
Yeah, Knuckles. Yeah. Yeah, I know who it is. I got that one right. I just can't remember his name. I know who it is. I'm trying to think. Green.
Yes, come on.
Green's.
Jack and Jill went up the.
Green's.
Jack and Jill went up what?
Greenhill.
Yes.
Greenhill.
Yes. His first name's Craig.
Craig Greenhill. That's it.
Craig, big fan of the podcast. Gus knows your nickname, but can't remember your your actual name.
I'm too old for
You're
trivia.
not too old. This is good. People love this. Since 1960, which player has been sent off the most number of times? This is a multiple choice question for you.
1960.
Since 1960.
Sent off the most times.
A. John Sattler. B. Jim Mills, Englishman, played with North Sydney. C. Noel Kelly. D. Les Boyd.
Well, I'd say Noel Kelly was more in the 60s, 50s and 60s. I don't think Noel Kelly was in the 70s. It's not John Sattler. Les Boyd sent off. How many times was Les sent off? Got a couple of big suspensions. He'd be in the grand final. Who was the other one?
Jim Mills.
Well, I wouldn't know how many times Jim Mills got sent off. I heard of him getting sent off, and I heard his reputation. And I think we've got a grandson of his or something playing at the Bulldogs at the moment. I'm going to say Jim Mills. Or Les Boyd.
The answer, staggering numbers these. The answer is C. Noel Kelly.
But he wasn't in the 70s. You said since 1960. Oh, well, Noel Kelly's easy because Noel Kelly got sent off. I thought you said 70s.
No,
Sorry.
since 1960.
No, 1960. Noel Kelly.
Noel Kelly got sent off 11 times.
Yeah. Mostly to get a hot shower.
11 times.
Noel Kelly didn't care. He just give it to everybody.
Did
you ever meet Noel Kelly?
Yeah. He's the most gentle man on the planet. Lovely
loves
bloke.
a beer and loved a joke, and what a lovely man. He was, and rugby league to his bootlaces.
But the red haze must have come over that gentle man when he ran on the field.
And he wasn't that big.
No,
but he was always, 60, sorry. I would have known that if you said
11 times.
I thought you said 70s. That's why I discounted the other ones.
Right, there's one more. Which well-known...
I don't even listen to the question properly.
Well, that's obvious. Which well-known former player coached by Phil Gould and has gone on to do great things in his post-football life was cited in the final game of his career and technically remains under suspension by the ARL judiciary? He's retired in 1999. Which well-known former player coached by Phil Gould, who's gone on to do great things in his post-football life, was cited in the final game of his career and therefore technically remains suspended?
1999? Was I coaching him in 99?
I don't believe... No, I don't believe you were.
No, I was at the
But
Roosters.
you had previously coached him.
I had previously coached him. It's technically under... Mark Geyer.
No. Retired in 1999.
Retired when?
1999. The final round of 1999, he was suspended for one game.
Peter Kelly got suspended for 6 games and retired.
So Peter Kelly's still suspended?
He's still suspended. I remember it distinctly. It was on poor old Fatty Vorton.
Oh.
We're playing at Penrith Park, and Kel was sort of getting towards the end of it. And right on half-time, we're in front, right on half-time, and Paul Vorton hit one up near our quarter, and he was sort of going to the ground. As he's going to the ground, he passed the ball, and Kel come across and got whack. And Fatty talks about it. Fatty nearly drowned in 2 inches of water because it was raining. And
that's right.
He knocked out before he hit to the ground. He landed face first on the ground. And the players are coming off the field, right? And I used to wait for him at the dressing room door as they're coming off. And Peter Kelly's the last one off, and he's coming up the thing. And no one saw it. The referees didn't see it. The linesmen didn't see it. No one saw it. He was one of the first ones to get cited on video evidence.
Oh.
They didn't do it in those days. So technically he thought he'd got away with it, and he's coming up, and I looked at him and I said, "What was that?" He said, "He bagged me in the paper 2 weeks ago." Anyway, he got cited and he got 6 weeks or something. He said,
too good.
"They don't want me to play, do they?" I said, "No, I think she's overkill." He gave it away. He retired. He bagged me in the paper a couple of weeks ago.
The answer is Sean Garlick.
Sean Garlick's. Oh, right. He was playing with South then.
That's right. That's when that's their first year back.
What would he have got cited for?
I don't know. Crush your tackle or something. All right, rule changes.
We didn't have crusher tackles back then. You couldn't have them back then.
Now, ask Gus here. Most needed rule change for me: taking away all penalties except for foul play against the team in possession and giving a handover instead. Think about the most common double movement, kick out on the full, blah blah blah. Double movement shouldn't even be double anyway. He thinks.
I'm going to interrupt you. I know where you're going with this.
This is an Ask Gus.
Yeah, go on. Okay.
Now that's what. I want to know your 3 rule changes that you changed. That's where I'm going.
I'm not going there.
What?
I've got 38 rules that I'd change.
Well, no, I want 3. I want 3 that cut the 3.
Because then they're not the important ones. Let me talk to you about rule changes, all right? Because I want to read you something, all right?
Yep.
Go on. What was your Ask Us question?
That was it.
What was it?
No, he was proposing that penalties.
Yeah, I read that one. I don't get that.
So if the team with the ball commits a foul, rather than giving a penalty, you just give the other team the ball, but they get the ball anyway.
No.
They get the ball anyway.
No, I didn't understand that.
Neither did I. I shouldn't have even asked that.
Oh, mate, he's having too many tibbles.
He's had too many floppy ducks. Right, I go. What do you got?
So a mate of mine, a very good mate of mine, who works in an industry that relies upon data analysis and algorithms. He's a mathematical genius and a technology genius, and he works with on data and algorithms using historical data over a long period of time to formulate probabilities of certain events happening. All right, so it's fairly, but he wrote to me some time ago, and it's something that I've kept, and it's very, very true, because when I read it to you, if you understand it, it will give you an insight as to how our game completely keeps chasing its tail with some of its rules and interpretations and everything. Now, everything that we do, or everything we've done for the last 15 years or so around rule changes and things for the game has not been for the betterment of the game. It has been for the betterment of the referee or the NRL administrators, to try and avoid criticism, to try and come with some sort of black and white interpretation that they could rely upon, that they think would appease the masses, and it certainly appeases the uneducated, but it's created more problems than it's solved a lot of the time. And he gave me an explanation as to what was happening with the game, and he kept begging me to try and step in to stop the constant changes that were happening, because his life is about dealing with complex issues, right?
He's not the only one.
Yeah, to sort through the complexity. And he said that all decisions that are based on emotions and opinions and things that can't be backed up with proper facts and data analysis are only going to get you unwanted results, right, in what you're doing. So he wrote this to me, and he said, the key point in any time changes are made to a complex system, such as sport, all right? Complex system. Our game is complex, right, in its nature, the way it's played. The key point is, any time changes are made to a complex system, such as sport, it is the unintended consequences, not the intended ones, that will dominate. And we see that a lot. We'll change a rule and it creates a problem somewhere else. We'll change a rule to solve a small problem, or to get the media off their back or the fans off their back on a little problem. It'll be knee-jerk reaction, but then it's the unintended consequences of that, and we can go through stripping rules, obstruction, all sorts of things, HR, everything. And what we don't see is then how it's applied by the referees, who themselves are trying to protect themselves. The bunker technology and all these types of things is all about protecting the reputation of the referees and trying to get them as little criticism as possible, all right? It is the unintended consequences, not the intended ones, that will dominate. Where there is a multi-dimensional, multifaceted, complex system, and that's what rugby league is. It's a multi-dimensional, multifaceted, complex system. Changes never have the desired effect and will cause changes that were not foreseen, which is correct, because players adapt, coaches adapt. They apply the rules differently to what was first intended. They applied in situations that didn't really relate. They're the things we didn't see happening.
Yeah.
Let's not kick the ball dead. You get 7 tackles. Well, that's changed the whole defensive systems. It's changed fifth tackle options. It's changed all the other things that it wasn't supposed to change. It is the nature of change, and something the NRL has done over and over and over again. When faced with a complex system, taking things away to simplify them rather than adding to confuse is the way to go. And he calls the term via negativa. Via negativa is the approach it's called. Uses the fact that there is an information asymmetry in that what you do not know is more prevalent than what you do know. And this comes into the work that he does, and when they're looking at historical data and all that sort of thing. So what you don't know is more prevalent than what you do know. You cannot accommodate for all the things that this change in the rule is going to affect.
Yeah.
The stuff that you don't know is going to be more prevalent than the stuff you do know. What you're trying to solve, you may or may not solve, but you're going to create other problems along the way. And then you end up chasing your tail, right, trying to make new rules because that's not what we meant with that rule, or they're taking advantage of that rule now, so we've got to change a rule to make them not take advantage of the rule that we changed that wasn't really the solution. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
That is to either disprove something rather than to prove it will work. Intervening too much in complex systems causes systems to break. Hallelujah. He goes into one of the rules. I won't talk about that. The most common unforeseen consequence, which will have a whole bunch of unforeseen consequences and also resulted in a less adventurous play, set of 6, constant bombing, etc., etc. Secondly, and he runs an operation which uses technology to garner an edge in what they do. All right, they use technology with all the data that they come in, the historical data, to garner an edge for investment or whatever they're trying to do. Technology for technology's sake is not the answer. The NRL's refereeing problems are due to an over-reliance on technology. What happens is a well-known phenomena where humans will relax and rely on the technology. We see it at our work, in the work that we do. Automating too much leads to suboptimal results. There is a swathe of research on referencing pilots and their overuse of autopilot when flying. Technology should be limited in its use and used exclusively for obvious errors and the ones that are going to count. In the grounding of offsides, those sorts of things. Technology will even be more prevalent, he said. He wrote to me at the time of the Captain's Challenge. He said, don't go down this road. All right. He said, the use of technology will be even more prevalent with the use of the Captain's Challenge. It is not the way to go. The NRL needs to strip it back, stop the constant changes to rules and simplify. They will ruin the game with the major changes and over-reliance on technology. We have direct parallels in our company, and I can assure you, small changes, if any, and reducing the over-reliance on technology is the way to go. It should augment, not dominate. Right, there is a place for it, but not to overuse it. And he's talking about it in relation to sport, and everything he says here has come true. And everything he says here, I can see in rule changes for the last 40 years, how the intended result is not the result that we got.
Well, the Captain's Challenge, right? The Captain's Challenge now is more often than not used for the teams to have a break.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's not about getting the right decision. That's an unintended...
Then we had to bring in the Captain's Challenge because they were giving away penalties deliberately to stop the game so then they could challenge the penalty. And then they were going to sin bin them if you did that. You know what I mean? It's chasing your tail the whole time. And it's in every facet of it. I can go back and look, I can go back through the history of the game. I can go back to the history of rules. I can go back to the history of the tackle, the history of the play of the ball, the history of refereeing, the history of technology, and tell you. But he wrote to me and he said, simplifying rather than trying to add to it is the way to go.
Yes.
When you try to make changes to a complex, multi-directional, and it's all this thing, black and white interpretation on obstruction, black and white interpretation on stripping, black and white interpretation on high tackles, and everyone, they're trying to get to a point where the referee could never be criticised about anything. And rather than throw it up to the bunker, give him 12 looks at it. And he's still getting it wrong.
Yeah, all right. So
he's dividing opinion.
We've got to move on.
I'm not talking about it anymore.
All right. Okay.
I just wanted to read that.
Well, I'll come back. I'll come back.
Do you want me to read it to you again?
No. I'll come back next week, and I'll follow up on that. Okay. Right. And I'm not going to hear from Luke Phillips today either because that's more
anytime changes are made to a complex system such as sport, it is the unintended consequences, not the intended ones, that will dominate. Where there is a multi-dimensional, multifaceted, complex system, changes never have the desired effect and will cause changes that were not foreseen. It is the nature of change and something the NRL has done over and over and over again. When faced with a complex system, taking things away to simplify rather than adding to confuse is the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Understand that it is the stuff you do not know that is more prevalent than the stuff you do know. That's why we take emotion, opinion, social media, fan outrage, protect my job out of the equation when making new rules, which has been the major reason why we change rules. Everything we do in the game is around those reasons. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
That's my soapbox for today.
Thanks very much.
We're going to have a segment called Soapbox.
The whole thing's a soapbox. What are you talking about? You got a horse running on the weekend.
I just drew barrier 2. That's nice.
Was it Tycoonist?
I hope that's the one he's referring to.
We've got
I just got a text to say you're happy with barrier 2.
The new Godolphin stable. Phil Gould.
I'll be ecstatic if it's barrier 2.
Okay, Stories of Origin. You would have seen that the podcast being advertised during our broadcasts of the footy. Very pleased to be presenting this. It's hopefully going to be really well embraced and enjoyed by everyone out there listening. We launch on Friday. So Friday, May 13th. Friday the 13th we're launching, Gus. That's good, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Episode 1. Origin is born with Fatty and Wally, the most prominent voices throughout that, but you'll enjoy that. Episode 2, the champions, Andrew Johns and Cameron Smith, speak a lot about their careers, a lot about particular incidents, including what they called in 2013... the Gus and Joey affair.
No, we went down for a camp, like a pre-camp, and Gus had a video of some players and what they were doing well, and he said, I got some footage of some players not doing stuff well. It was on myself, missing tackles. Well, he put me on show in front of everyone, so I'm just sitting there absolutely stewing. So then, as it finishes, I'm sort of sitting there, and then a lot of the blokes come out, don't worry about it. I'm like, I couldn't care less. Then I thought about it, and I went, oh. So we go down the road for lunch, and I'm sitting next to Ben Kennedy. BK's just going, slow up, don't worry. I'm like, yeah. So anyway, just come outside, I want to talk to you. And then we had
This is Gus.
Gus.
And this is photographed in the paper.
A discussion, yeah. But, mate, at the time, I wasn't playing that well. I had a lot of distractions away from footy, and probably footy wasn't my number one focus. Well, probably been hard, but other things were sort of getting in the way. Anyway, put me on show there, and I didn't sort of take it that well. And then obviously it blew up. There's photos everywhere, and there was talk that I wasn't going to play. It was all paper talk. I was never not going to play. But anyway,
So did you have a blue with Gus in the background?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we had words. And
what did he say to you?
He just said, you don't look like you're enjoying yourself. You're not playing well. Don't look fit. I was going tick, tick, tick.
Oh.
I think you're partying too much. Tick, tick, tick. And but I went away. He said, righto, there's a month till Origin. Get yourself right. So, mate, I went home and I did that much extra training, got myself rock hard fit, and then we got into Origin. I was ready to go. So there's no one better at me in managing, and for managing big egos too. And at the time, I needed my wings clipped. I needed a kick in the backside, and I wouldn't get it anywhere else. You get to a certain level, people don't tell you the truth. They bullshit to you. And he didn't bullshit to me. He hit me straight between the eyes, and at the time I didn't like it. But I look back now, and it's what needed to be done. And it's probably only a couple of people who would do that, and Gus was one of them.
So there you go, the Gus and Joey affair. Now, as Joey said then, and as you know better than anyone, coaching is managing egos, and you had to take on a pretty big ego there in 2003.
Yeah, we won that series, and Joey was outstanding. We won the series in the first 2 games. It blew him away. Yeah, the reporting of that incident, as Joey alluded, was disgraceful back in the day and was pointed at me more than anything. And it made it very, very difficult for him. I don't worry about those sort of things, but
So front page of the paper, it looked like you were pointing at each other, and
no,
they're all set up.
That's
of course,
not
but...
the actual. I remember the actual photo. And in that photo, I was actually explaining to him how I wanted him to defend. Right, because if you remember a few podcasts ago, I told you about I defended him behind the line in an old-fashioned role, and that he would only loom into the line to put pressure on Lockyer, wherever side of the field he was. So rather than defending one position, he would defend one player. And when Lockyer was ready to inject himself, and Joey was a really good reader of play. So I was actually standing there talking to him. I said, you just stand behind the line. And that's the photo where I'm going like that. And they dressed it up. They dressed it up into something that it wasn't.
Yes.
And Joey's given a fairly honest account of of what happened. There's a lot more to it than that, and there's a lot more to where Joey was at that time in his life and where he was in that round of football. And I was involved with the Roosters. I was coaching director of the Roosters at that time, and we'd actually played Andrew the day before and beaten Newcastle by 40 out of the football stadium. So he was in a pretty foul mood when he turned up anyway. And I remember distinctly that because it was such a blow up in the media, and the media hated me, and it was all about getting me and getting us beaten and having us fail, and they're still doing it today. But it was I didn't blame Andrew for that, but he rang me a couple of weeks later and he said, oh, it's been a tough couple of weeks. I said, oh, well, that's footy, mate. I said, they're going to make things up and do all that sort of thing. He said, do you want me in the team or not? Right. And I said, Andrew, they've sold 52,000 tickets to this game. They're not coming to watch me coach, mate. They're coming to watch you play. And he said, yeah, right. So that was that.
Yeah.
But he was outstanding. We won the first two games. Before the third one, I took him away to Foster, and that was the Zian Booker night. We didn't go too well the third game, not that I worried about too much, but the series was over. There's a really good it's actually a really great story, that series. It's one of my favourite ever series.
Why?
Wayne Bennett coached Queensland. We'd had a drawn series the year before. I'd sort of come back. I was the coaching director at the Roosters, so it was coaching Origin was difficult when you're not a club coach. I've always found that. But and Andrew with his teammates dominated the first two games of that series, and we won it. And it was against a Wayne Bennett coach Queensland. It was the opening of the new Suncorp Stadium. There was a lot in their favour. There was two games in Queensland. I remember sitting at the night before game one, and I put a lot of work into, because it was two games in Queensland, and the opening of the big stadium, and the fact there was Bennett, it was going to be huge. I remember sitting at Gambaro's restaurant in Caxton Street there. The night before the game, I used to like to take our staff out for a few drinks, and the players were just going to sleep in tomorrow anyway, and we weren't playing till 8 o'clock at night, so we'd go out and have a few drinks and have a night out, and I'd thank the staff for their work during the week. And I was sitting there, and Chris Johns, remember Chris Johns, former Origin player who I'd coached back in the 90s, was at the restaurant, and he'd had a few beers and was sitting there talking about footy and the Broncos and all that sort of thing. He said, we're up against it here. He said, why? He said, two games in Queensland, Suncorp Stadium. He said, Bennett, he'll treat it like a 3-game series. He said, they're going to be very hard to beat. I said, no, they'll be hard to beat. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, oh, well, he knows he's got the decider in game 3. He said he'll have this planned out. He knows he's got the big decider in game 3. There's no way we can win the decider in game 3. And I said, well, the series might be over by then, which it was. Great days.
Oh, yeah. What's the extra edge with Bennett's when you coached against Bennett in Origin?
He was the best. I only did it for a couple of years. We had a drawn series, and then we won the next year. But, he was the best.
Did you love it?
Oh, yeah, loved it. Had a great rivalry with him. Loved it. Never, I've got to know him better since we coached rather than when we coached, but there was rivalry at everyone. There was coaches back in those days. There was always rivalry with coaches. These days they have love-ins. They all love each other.
All right. Stories of Origin. Gus has his own episode as well. Looking forward to launching that on Friday.
It was a funny day. It wasn't funny for Andrew, but it was a funny day. And it was disgraceful the way the media reported it.
What was funny about that? You mean funny as in ha-ha, or funny as in it was weird?
Looking back, it was funny. It was funny. Yeah. But Andrew, he was the greatest, no doubt about that.
Magic round. Friday afternoon, 6 p.m, Bulldog night. Bulldog to win. Now, I'll tell you what the worry is. The rain in Brisbane, we're playing 8 games on the one ground.
Yeah. Might have to move a few down the road.
I think they'll do that. I think that defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
But
that'll be right.
They'll get the roller out or something and try and keep it all squished
A
together.
lot of rain predicted up there. Should be a heavy 10.
Doing with 10,000 this weekend as well.
Mm.
All right, now, Friday night football. This will be quite something. Manly versus Brisbane. Game 2 of Magic Round. They will be hanging off the rafters. Turbo has had a run. Olakawatu returns. Schuster won't play. He's on an extended bench, continuing to struggle with that calf. For Brisbane, Payne Haas is in and Kurt Capewell is in. Tamari Martin's going great at fullback. Carrigan. How good was Carrigan last week? They were super.
They work hard, but they're physically, you can see them growing into themselves. We called a Brisbane game. No, the Bulldogs played against the Broncos a few weeks ago, and I parked my car underneath there, where the OB trucks are.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was getting out of my car, a number of the Bronco players were getting out of their cars, and I was walking behind them. And just, they're developing into really great athletes and strong men, and they're bigger than people realise. This athletically a really good team, and they're going to be hard to beat. I don't think Manly are in Manly's best form at the moment. We know that they can click at any time, and we know the turbo factor and all of that. But by the same token, up there at Suncorp Stadium, Magic Round, they get an extra home game, don't they? This is Manly's home game playing against Broncos at Suncorp Stadium. Broncos are going to be very, very hard to beat. Very hard to beat.
Different team at Suncorp.
Good
team anyway. But
they are. They are, a different team. It's easy to tip Manly, but I couldn't back them. Put it that way, I couldn't back them.
Manly favourites on Blue Bet.
I couldn't back them at that price. I couldn't.
We'll go and tip the Broncos.
Well, I'm not saying the Broncos. It sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, don't I?
It's that kind of game, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Broncos. I could back Broncos at that price. I can't back Manly at that price.
There we go. Saturday, early game. Warriors on the bounce back after last week. I mean, how weird. They had 70 put on them against Melbourne. Bounce back beat Canberra. Just. Last week couldn't beat 11 at the end. Mm-hmm. And now they head up to Magic Round to play South Sydney, who have lost Cameron Murray. He's going to miss a few weeks. Neck, shoulder surgery, and probably misses Origin 1 too. Yeah,
and not going good enough to be a certainty in any game. Warriors, I don't know where you go from that last week. I don't know how this week unfolds for them. We saw them bounce back after the 70-10 loss, but I've rated this loss more frustrating than that. You can go to Melbourne, get on the wrong leg, and things happen, and Melbourne can have one of those days. And I'm not saying 70's acceptable; it's not. But and there was a little bit of give up, but they went to Canberra the next week and won. Are they going good enough to beat the Rabbitohs? Are nowhere near what they were. This is again a danger game for the Rabbitohs. I'm going to tip Warrior.
Oh, Warrior. Okay. 5:30. Another flip of the coin, maybe. Gold Coast Titans versus St George Illawarra Dragons. Now, for the Titans, changes, and look, they had to be. I called that game against the Roosters for radio, and their defence was deplorable last week. Philip Campbell's back at fullback. Sammy's back on the wing. Asako's coming on the other wing, and Hassan Masters is coming to the back line. So they've totally changed their three-quarter line. Brimson goes back to 5'8". They're the main ones. And for the Dragons, it's... Jack Bird's back. He's playing in the second row, so he's kept Damone at 5'8", and Bird goes into number 11. Sullivan on the bench in 14, but the score got away from Melbourne last week. But they're still in reasonable nick, aren't they?
Yeah, look, I think this is a game where the Dragons can probably score 3 or 4 tries. That's what the Titans' defence is offering up at the moment. If the Dragons score 3 or 4 tries, they'll win comfortably because they'll defend those. So this is a game where the Dragons can put points on the board and they'll defend them. So, the Titans, they'll be embarrassed again after last week, and we get the bounce back. Dragons themselves, reality bites sometimes. You think you're going okay, you won a couple of games, and all of a sudden you run into the storm, and they do that to you. Mind you, a lot of the tries had nothing to do with missed tackles. There was a lot of kicks and chip kicks and freaky sort of Melbourne play. By the same token, 40-odd points. I think Dragons will get to 20, and that will be enough. They'll defend that.
All right. Saturday night footy on 9, because there's no Thursday. We pick up the Saturday game, and it is the game that everyone's been looking forward to. Melbourne and Penrith, 1v2. The news came through, Ryan Pappenhausen, 4 to 6 weeks. Another injury keeps him out of Origin contention. Such sad news. He's been dynamic. Leads the Dally M's. Now, on Blueback, Gus, this was $1.91 each of 2. Pappenhausen comes out, and Remus Smith as well. It's now $2.15 Melbourne, $1.71 Panthers.
Yeah, I think they also came to their senses. I don't see Penrith losing, to be honest.
Really?
No. I think that game last week against Parramatta tops them off nicely. That will steel them more for this game than what Melbourne Storm have been doing the last few weeks and galloping away and winning by 70s and 50s and 40s. And, the fact that Pappenhausen, a game breaker, is not going to be there either. Don't get me wrong. Melbourne can win. They're a very professional team and they know what they're doing. But I think Panthers, with that game last week against Parramatta, it just tops them off nicely. Leota and Brian I'll come back. They've got a game under their belt. They're closer to full strength. I think Panthers will get it done. The Panthers, I think they needed that last week. I think some of their games this year haven't been at their bristling best, and they're sort of hopping along on one leg, and they can beat anybody anytime they want. And Parramatta just exposed them a little bit last weekend, and I think it was good for the Panthers to lose that one leading into this one. I think it tops them off nicely, so Panther wins for mine.
All right, Sunday, Cronulla, firm favourites to beat Canberra. Don't think there's much to report there in terms of team news. Jack Whiten still sidelined with suspension, of course. Hard to see the Sharks losing, I would have thought, after what they've done all season.
Well,
although they've got no Kennedy and no Ramian. Sorry, what am I talking about? Yes, they've got the 2 suspended. My apologies.
Yeah.
Hines, fullback.
Yeah.
Braden Trindle into the 7, and Connor Tracy, who might be the most underrated player in the comp, goes in to fill in the centres.
They lose nothing there. Their only problem will be having 13 players on the field where they're getting in each other's way.
Yes, they might play with 12.
Might be too many players for them. They'll beat the Raider.
Sunday footy, 4 p.m. Roosters, Para. Can Para back it up? Now, this is the curiosity, isn't it? And the Roosters, did they get played back into a bit of form last week? They lose Verrills and Collins. Verrills injured, Collins suspended. All systems go for Para.
Yeah, look, I don't know about play themselves back into form, but they put the smile back on their faces, which can be just as important. And they were able to run in some tries, and that'll be welcome after a few tough weeks where they've lost narrow games. Parramatta. I thought one of the best things about their win against the Panthers was that they didn't over-celebrate it when it was over. They just were able to walk away from it. And
they had to claw themselves back into it in the second half, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They showed a lot of grit. Hard one. I'm going to go Rooster.
Okay. It's a good round. Really good round. And the last game, Tigers versus the flying North Queensland Cowboys to round out Magic Round. Late game Sunday evening.
Yeah, they're like a giant snowball racing downhill. They're just getting bigger and faster, the Cowboys, aren't they?
Not too many snowballs in Townsville.
No, but that was a metaphor.
I know it was.
Bulldog, Bronco, Warrior, I'm going for all the outsiders. Warrior, Dragon, they're a favourite. Panther, favourite. Shark, favourite. Rooster, outsider. Cowboy, favourite.
There we go. Super long 6 tackles this week, but we missed last week, so there you go. You got some extra to make up. Thank you very much. Great to chat again. That's 6 tackles for this week. Enjoy Magic Round. See you next week.